back to Scolio Pilates. In this video, we're going to use the information that we learned about finding our curves, and we're going to use that information to wedge the spine a little closer to neutral, and that way our muscles can work in a more physiologically normal position, and we can find that strength that we need for just everyday life, and of course, definitely for doing all the things we love to do. In addition to what we learned in our last video about finding your rotations, we also want to learn about the position of the pelvis. So to begin, let's go ahead and lie ourselves down. And in this position, let's go ahead and straighten both legs. The head goes back. Place your hands on the hip bones. And now go ahead and look up at the hip bones. Take a peek to see if one hip bone is closer to the ceiling or the sky than the other. For me, it's extremely clear. When I lift my head and my fingers are on my hip bones, my right hip looks like it's hanging from the moon. It's way up there. So I'm going to grab my wedges. These are Scolio Fits. You can certainly grab some washcloths. You can even push sand underneath your spine if you happen to be on the beach like me today. So we're going to start in the low back and hip area. In the last video, we learned that my left low back is my convex or my sand dune. I want the wedge to go underneath that sand dune. However, we have now an additional bit of information, and that is that my right hip likes to live attached to the sky. So if I wedge underneath my sand dune and my left low back, that's going to push that away. It's going to take that rotation and de-rotate it. And my left hip that is back and my right hip that is forward, if I wedge the low back and the hip together, now I can take care of both of those things at the exact same time. The leg that is straight is going to be on the side of my low back hollow or my low back tide pool. So we have our low back wedge set up. If the hip and the low back are doing opposite things, then you'll need two washcloths, one for the low back sand dune and one for the hip rotation. If you can't really notice that the hip's doing anything, there's a good chance it's not. Maybe it's just level and perfectly happy, and we don't want to mess with that, so don't do anything there. So from here, I'm going to show you my other side so we can work on this together. And again, this goes underneath my left low back and left hip. Now my upper back sand dune is underneath the right side. So that's going to go underneath the right side. It doesn't go very far in, just maybe half an inch or an inch, and both palms to the ceiling here. I'm going to place both hands now on one on my hip, the side that doesn't have the wedge, one on the opposite rib. And in this position, I'm going to use the weight of my hands to very gently sink the hip and the rib to the sand. I'm letting the earth support the hip, letting the earth support the rib. I'm not pounding anything into place. I'm not pushing anything into place. Everybody just gets to chill and just sink on its own timing, and that's important. It might take a little bit longer than we have in this video. Let's take a little inhale, and let's take a little bit of a sinking motion down into the earth. Again, we'll inhale, exhale, and we sink to the earth. We're going to add on to this now. This time you're going to inhale, everything sinks. Exhale, we draw the hip and the rib away from each other. You might feel the tiniest bit of a stretch, but you should never feel any strain here. It's extremely important. Little inhale, little exhale, diagonal stretch. I'm pulling my right hip and my left rib away from each other. And again, inhaling, feeling the breeze come into the lungs. Exhaling, we return the air to the breeze. Inhaling, the breeze enters. Exhaling, we sink the rib, we sink the hip, we find the diagonal. Let's go ahead and add on to this again. Inhaling, exhaling, hip and rib to the earth. We find the diagonal, we squeeze the butt, we lift the leg. Inhale, the breeze enters. Exhale, the breeze returns. We sink the rib, the hip. We find the diagonal, we squeeze the butt, we lift the leg. So that's an awful lot happening on the exhale, but we can do it. Inhale, the breeze enters. Exhale, we sink. We find the diagonal, we squeeze the butt, we lift the leg. Again, inhale the breeze. Exhale, the breeze returns to the sky. We sink the rib and the hip. We find the diagonal, we squeeze the butt, we lift the leg. And we do want it to happen in that order. Inhaling, expand with the breeze. Exhaling, we sink. We find the diagonal, we squeeze the butt, we lift. Let's try that 3 more times. Give it a little wiggle first. We're trying to introduce our bodies to our real core. The core muscles that work once our spines are realigned. So little inhale for the breeze. Exhale, sink to the earth. Find the diagonal. Squeeze the butt. Lift the leg. Inhale the breeze. Exhale, sink, diagonal, squeeze, and lift. We have 1 more. Inhaling, exhaling, the diagonal, squeezing the butt, lifting the leg. Lower the leg slowly, gently, respectfully to your spine. Take those wedges out, or the washcloths if you're using washcloths. Give your butt a little wiggle, give your spine a little wiggle, the neck a little wiggle. Roll to one side and come up. Rock through center and come up, whichever works best for your spine. Sitting cross-legged, shake off the sand, and give your spine a little wiggle. Okay, so that was our first introduction to really finding that scoliosis core. You know, we're often asked to use our core muscles, but if our spine is kind of wound up into a rotation, then we can't really use the core muscles that are supposed to be used in exercises like we just did. But if we can find our elongation, we can find our breath, we can find the derotation and that diagonal length, then we can start to approach the idea of using the muscles that are actually intended for lifting that leg and for squeezing that glute muscle. This has been a balanced body video.